trauma. So how did this whole evening tonight come about? I heard Leah Penniman on NPR when her first book came out, Farming While Black, and I was so impressed with her. I was impressed with what she had to say, but I was impressed with her energy. I just felt so good listening to her. And Liz and I were just talking. Everything she does is really about hope. It's really about hope and possibility, and it just really filled my heart. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then she just had a new book come out called Black Earth Wisdom, and I heard her again on NPR. Did anybody else hear? Did you hear her interview on NPR? Yeah, and just wonderful. And I got the book, and I couldn't put it down, and I read it in a few days. And I thought to myself, we really need to be exploring these issues. So I was talking to somebody about this, and they said, Leah Penniman's, and I wrote to Soul Fire Farm, and Leah's on a sabbatical, and they couldn't give us a speaker for quite some months. They're tied up in doing other things. And then somebody said to me, Liz Vitale lives in West Hartford, and she's a mother-in-law of Leah Penniman. I was like, oh. And I was just saying to Liz that I wrote to her, and Liz, we've met before though, right? Or have we? I know, yeah, you and I? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, Barbara, can you help? Unmute, Liz?
Yeah. So we've met many times.
Many times, right? Yeah. But I kind of, out of the blue, wrote to Liz, and she wrote right back, and she's been so generous and has been so giving of her time already before this evening. And I just feel so grateful to her for helping us explore these issues. And so I'm going to introduce Liz, and then she's going to take it over. And later on, we're going to talk to Ileia Belton, who's one of the gardeners who works with our Eats of the Street program. She tends 2 pots in Hartford of organic vegetables, and we'll discuss everything as we go along. So Liz Vitale is a psychologist practicing in West Hartford, formerly a nurse midwife. She is the mother of Jonah Vitale Wolf, who is married to Leah Penniman. Together, Jonah and Leah founded Soul Fire Farm in 2010, about 5 years after they moved to Albany, New York, and about 4 years after they bought a piece of land in Grafton, New York. Liz has been involved in every phase of the growth and development of Soul Fire Farm in the lives of her son and daughter-in-law, she says, and their 2 children. Liz's grandchildren, Nashima is 20 and Emmett is 18, and they consider Soul Fire Farm another sibling. So Liz is proudly one of the Soul Fire Farm's grandmothers, and it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce Liz Vitale.
Thank you, Donna. Well, I love talking about Soul Fire Farm because I'm constantly in awe of what they have created there. So in 2005, they moved to Albany with a 2.5-year-old and a several-week-old baby to join a kind of intentional community of families that lived in a neighborhood in Albany. And before long, and this was a neighborhood that has little access to healthy food, to fresh food. And they call it food apartheid rather than food desert, because food apartheid, it's intentional. I mean, it's all part of just how neighborhoods are funded. And so in this neighborhood, pretty soon people realized that Jonah and Leah knew how to farm, knew how to grow food, because they had both done that quite a bit through their years. And so people started saying, when are you going to grow us food? When are you going to start growing food for us? And the Albany Free School, which was kind of the hub of this intentional community, had land in Grafton that they used for some wilderness program education as part of their curriculum. So they looked up in Grafton and they were able to purchase some land, and they just continued living in Albany, but they started the process of starting from nothing, just a piece of land that had been logged, and the soil was not very healthy. They had to get electricity in and, and start building a place to live. So they bought some land and they just started nourishing the soil, and over several years built a house, and in 2010 they started Soulfire Farm. By now they were growing food, and they started with a small CSA with shares on a sliding scale and doorstep delivery to people's homes, because most of people in these neighborhoods that, did not have transportation, and it was quite a distance, about 45 minutes from Albany. So fast forward, there have been many, many chapters, but there are several programs that focus on nourishing their communities in different ways. One is called now Solidarity Shares rather than a CSA. It's a free box of fresh food, including eggs or sprouts if people are vegan. So protein and fresh food every week during the growing season, delivered to their doorsteps. And this is for people affected by incarceration in the family, some family members, immigrants, and basically just food scarcity, food apartheid. And so that's one program, Solidarity Shares. They pack the boxes at the farm, and then somebody with a van, delivers to their doorsteps. Another program is called Soulfire in the City, which involves building gardens in people's yards, front yards, backyards, bringing everything, and working with the people and building the garden, bringing the soil, bringing seedlings and tools and instruction and mentorship. So that, and during COVID, particularly the first year of COVID, I think they installed 40 gardens in Albany and Troy, and they continue to do that. And so people are growing food for themselves and learning that, how empowering that is. And then they have these immersion programs, which have, which involve, it's called FIRE, Farming in Relationship to Earth. And there are 5-day immersion programs where people come, people of color, BIPOC, and they come and they just share the life of the farm, and including ritual and song and dance, and a lot of healing goes on, and reconnecting with their ancestral right and connection to the earth. That many people of color have a sense that farming is about enslavement and that kind of ancestral trauma. So they really do a lot with healing that and celebrating their original connection to land, wherever their ancestors came from. They were farmers and growers. So, they plant food, they harvest food, they cook food, they learn about the different foods. So that's been a very popular program. It has usually 4 or 5 sessions per summer. People come from all over, and there's always a waiting list. So then they also have youth groups coming for a day, just to have an experience, picking food, cooking food, hands in the dirt, and just the joy of it. And there's song and creating raps about eating carrots and that kind of thing. They have community work days where people come and participate in many different tasks, and break for a potluck lunch, and then work for another hour or two. And those are often very joyful events where a lot gets done, and it's again a celebration of community and of the earth and what the bounty of the earth. They have a very extensive website, soulfirefarm.org, where they have many videos that you can watch, Skillshare on every aspect of farming, cultivating mushrooms, foraging, you name it, pruning trees, fruit trees. So, and they have, part of their staff is Leah's sister, Naima, has been living at the farm for the past few years, and she is the director of education and does a lot of the programming. And she's a performance poet, and we're going to share 2 short videos where she is performing some poetry that is very relevant to the whole theme. So I think we can start first with a video of Leah doing a TED Talk on uprooting racism and ceding sovereignty.
As a young adult, I spent months studying agriculture in Ghana, West Africa, one of my ancestral homelands. My mentors were the Queen Mothers of Manya Krobo, guardians of culture, history, and land. They asked me one day, is it true that in the United States, most farmers put a seed in the ground and they don't pray or sing or pour libations or dance or even say thank you to the seed, and they expect it to grow and feed them? When I ashamedly admitted to the truth of this, they said, well, no wonder you're all sick. You treat the earth as a thing and not as a living relative. You see, the seed and all that it stood for was so precious to our ancestral grandmothers in West Africa that they braided seeds of black rice into their hair while trapped in the bowels of transatlantic slave ships. They hid away the okra, molokia, Levant cotton, sesame, and black-eyed peas that they had saved for generations. They secreted the melon, amara, kale, sorrel, basil, tamarind, and kola that had co-evolved with their people. The seed was their most precious legacy, and they believed against odds in the future of tilling and reaping the earth. They believed that their descendants would exist and that we would inherit the gift and honor the gift of the seed. With the seed, our grandmothers also braided their ecosystemic and cultural knowledge. They braided the wisdom of sharing the land, such as the Husa co-op farm system of the Krobo people. They braided the wisdom of sharing labor and wealth, such as the Dokpwe worker co-ops and the Susu credit unions of the Dahomey people. They braided the wisdom of caring for the sacred earth, such as the carbon-capturing dark earth compost of Ghana, the no-till raised beds of the Ovambo people, the soil-stabilizing polycultures of Nigeria, the rotational grazing and swidden agriculture of Guinea, and the Zai and Tassa pits that turn the Sahel desert green. When our ancestors arrived in colonial America, they tragically encountered a very different system of relating to land and food, one rooted in stolen land, exploited labor, and an extractive relationship with the earth. Armed with the white Christian doctrine of discovery, settlers perpetuated genocide, enslaved millions, concentrated land and power, and in just one generation, stripped the soil of over 50% of its organic matter. To this day, we live under food and land apartheid, with over 98% of the agricultural land being white-owned. Black farmers currently operate just 1.5% of the nation's farms, down from 14% in 1910, having lost over 12 million acres to USDA discrimination, racist violence, and legal trickery. Over 80% of the people working the land in the United States are Latine, yet only 2.5% of our farms are owned and operated by that community, making managing a farm among the whitest jobs in America. Agricultural workers are not protected by the same labor laws as other workers and don't have the right to overtime, days off, fair wages, or collective bargaining. Hunger, diabetes, heart disease, kidney failure, and other diet-related illnesses unequally burden people of color. Today, Black and brown communities remain disproportionately landless and with inadequate access to life-giving foods. The food system's oppression of people is mirrored in its harm to the earth, with agriculture among the leading causes of water withdrawals, greenhouse gas emissions, and habitat loss. Yet despite the heartbreak and terror they experienced from the extractive food system, there were Black farmers in every generation who remembered the seeds they had inherited and the wisdom those seeds carried. Ecological humility is part of the cultural heritage of Black people. While our 400+ years immersion in racial capitalism has attempted to squash that connection to the sacred earth, there were those who persisted in believing that the land and waters are family members and who acted accordingly. Who were some of these rememberers? Well, Dr. George Washington Carver, Black agronomist at Tuskegee University, remembered. He said, "Unkindness to anything means an injustice done to that thing. The above principle applies equally to soil." He spent the pre-dawn hours in the forest listening to the divine voice of the plants to give him instructions for his agroecological research. Arguably one of the founders of the modern organic and regenerative movement, Carver advanced leguminous cover cropping, mulching, composting, and crop rotation, and restored severely degraded southern soils. Right relationship with land was also remembered by Booker T. Whatley, one of the progenitors of diversified small farms and farm-to-table strategies like Pick Your Own, community-supported agriculture, and direct-to-consumer marketing. Whatley's ideas made it possible for farmers to rise out of abject poverty while restoring their soil to health. Cooperative land ownership and cooperative labor were remembered by Shirley and Charles Sherrod in founding the first ever community land trust in the state of Georgia, and by Fannie Lou Hamer in creating Freedom Farms in Mississippi with other sharecroppers. Understanding that land care and social justice are intertwined, Ancestor Hamer taught us that if you have 400 quarts of greens and gumbo soup canned for the winter, nobody can push you around or tell you what to say or do. Generation after generation, despite having lost nearly all of their land, the seed of the living earth was passed down in the Black farming community through the hands of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, National Black Farmers Association, Land Loss Prevention Project, Hattie Carthen's Urban Gardens, and now to us. When I started farming over 25 years ago, I began to wonder how I could honor the legacy of the seeds braided into my ancestors' hair. I wondered if I could help create a farm based on the wisdom carried in those seeds. And I wondered if all of us together could show that ancestral farming is both productive and ecologically sensible, a viable way to feed the planet without destroying it. In 2010, Soulfire Farm was born with a mission to reclaim ancestral belonging to land and to end racism and exploitation in the food system. Using Afro-Indigenous farming practices like raised beds, silvopasture, perennial polyculture, no-till, and mulching, we started working to regenerate 80 acres of land. In just 12 years, we remediated a foot of topsoil, increased diversity in the soil microbiome, and tripled the levels of organic matter. The soil in my left hand is where we began. The rich, dark, aromatic humus in my right hand is where we are today. The land where we farm is held cooperatively, giving nature rights and a vote on the council, and returning land rights to the Mohican people through a cultural respect easement. The harvest of the land is shared through solidarity shares, with no-cost weekly doorstep deliveries provided to people surviving food apartheid. We train and equip the rising generation of Black and brown farmers, and now have over 1,000 alumni who are setting up their own regenerative heritage farming projects. And the Soulfire community is not alone. Sibling farm organizations like SAFON, National Black Food and Justice Alliance, East New York Farms, Black Church Food Security Network, and myriad more Black and Indigenous earth stewards are keeping our agrarian traditions alive and learning how to hear the voice of the seeds once again. The movement is growing, and the soil can tell. For every 1% increase in organic matter, we sequester roughly 8.5 metric tons of atmospheric carbon per acre. So if we were to scale these ancestral farming practices globally, spreading the seeds of regenerative annual cropping, tree intercropping, and silvopasture, we could pull over 100 gigatons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and put it back into the soil where it belongs. And we can still grow enough food to feed the world. Yields in intercropped polyculture fields are generally higher than in monocropped fields, and the yield gap between organic and conventional is shrinking over time. When we stop using quarterly returns in our calculus and switch to a generational timescale, the internal and external yields of ancestral agriculture rise dramatically. Yet it's not enough to just emulate Afro-Indigenous agricultural practices, or those from Indigenous communities across the globe. We must have the courage to address generational trauma from centuries of land-based oppression. While the land was the scene of these crimes, the land was never the criminal. By working together on land reform, farm worker rights, reparative justice for Black farmers, and rematriation of land for Indigenous communities, we can ensure that those with essential ecosystemic and cultural remembering have the resources to implement the land-honoring practices that we desperately need. In this time, when we are acutely aware of the fractures in our system of runaway consumption and corporate insatiability, the path forward demands that we take our rightful place as the younger siblings in creation, deferring to the oceans, forest, mountains, and seeds as our teachers. By practicing ecological humility, we heal the soil, the planet, and ourselves. As we all work together to uproot racism and seed sovereignty in the food system, we pray that the words of our mouths, the meditation of our hearts, and the work of our hands be acceptable to our grandmothers who passed us these sacred seeds. Ashe.
So we can open it up for a little discussion. People have comments, reactions, questions for a few minutes. And I'll try to answer questions people might have.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I own a farm. I inherited a farm in 2019. It's been in my family in December for 135 years. I guess that would make me a new Black farmer. My question is, how would one get started I'm literally starting almost from ground zero because I want to sustain the property. I'm working on a documentary to tell the story, but how might one get started in some of the types of work that the folks at Soulful Farm are doing?
Well, Leah's first book, Farming While Black, is almost like a manual, very detailed. I mean, a lot of the historical, the Afro-Indigenous roots of the practices, and a lot about crop planning and just really the how-to type of thing. And so that book can be a guide. If you go on their website, you can sign up for one of their community work days, and that way really get a feel for the farm and talk with people who are on the staff, about the nitty-gritty of what they're doing. And they are available for mentorship. I mean, they love supporting people who are doing these kinds of projects. wherever they are. So
thank you. Yeah.
yeah, and then there are a lot of they have a lot of offerings, videos on the website. They're called, I think, 3D. But anyway, just browse the website. They're so informative and just so you could learn just a lot. And then if you have a chance to go there, really just talking with some of the people that are working there, you know, day by day.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Congratulations. That's really exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah. Where's your farm located, Ira?
So my farm is located in the oldest settlement in the Louisiana Purchase. It's north of Shreveport, Louisiana. And we actually, I live in West Hartford, so I guess I could say we're neighbors. But needless to say, I had a team of folks who, for Memorial Day, we did a cleanup day event and drove down from Hartford, from West Hartford, all the way to Louisiana. It was a 23-hour drive. And we're working with a group out of, they're headquartered in Louisiana, but the CEO is in Houston, and I've met with her actually. And they operate an 8,800 member farming group for Black farmers worldwide. Mm-hmm. And so some folks showed up and also participated in the cleanup day. So right now, just doing a lot of fundraising, planning for another Memorial Day event next year, and putting together at least a trailer for the documentary about my family. I'm the last living member of my immediate family. So basically, we've owned it, or now I own it, but we've owned it since 1873.
And I would guess that there might be some people who went through the immersion programs who are maybe in your locale, which would really be cool if you know, and we can look into. What part of Louisiana are you at?
It's called Natchitoches. I can spell it for you. I'll put it in.
Okay.
Anyone else have? Thank you, Ira. Anybody else have a question? Anything that you were struck by in Leah's talk that you're kind of chewing over? Oh, Lynn.
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Lucinda. Yes.
Okay, so I just had a question about like the history that she talked about, the cultural ways that the land was cared for. And would her book be like a start to learn about that? Because there's so much history that I realized that I just never received throughout my education. So I'm trying to learn now. I have a garden that I'm working on, and it doesn't, some it does well and some it doesn't. So anyways, I'm just wondering if I do need to look at the land in a certain way and treat it like it is a family member. I think that might change things with the way my garden looks.
Yeah, I think you'll find some of that in both of Leah's books. In The Farming While Black, she talks a lot about the origins of some of the practices, and the reverence for land and treating it like a relative. And then it's a very practical guide. And then the Black Earth Wisdom is a compilation of interviews with Black, soulful conversations with Black environmentalists. And again, at the beginning of the book, she goes through historical periods of Black people, Black and brown people in agriculture throughout the world. So she really presents a lot of a history.
Thank you.
You know, can I just jump in here too? There's a reason we don't know this history. It was it was, you know, it was obscured for all these years, and she's really unearthing all of these stories in addition to everything else that she's doing in terms of farming and reclaiming these stories. So there's a lot of history in Black Earth Wisdom, and it's important for us all to know it. So I highly recommend the book. And Lynn, oh, yes.
Hi, is it my turn?
It is.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi Liz, Liz is a personal friend too, so I'm excited to be connecting the dots. I heard, going back maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a really exciting news segment, and I can't remember if it was in like 60 Minutes or CBS Sunday Morning or what it was, but it was taking place in a southern town where a nonprofit was in fact either borrowing or leasing, but I think it was borrowing people's front and backyards to grow food. And it was turning unused suburban spaces into really productive growing spaces. And I was so excited about it, but I failed to write down the reference. And all of the years that have gone by, I've never been able to track down that information. So I was very excited, Liz, to hear you mention this type of project. And I would love to learn more about how we might start that kind of movement here in the suburbs of Hartford. And I also just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that this month, Connecticut Magazine, which is a publication of the public broadcasting stations, has a several-page long article about urban farming and Black urban farming. And there's a man that I've read about several times now named Travis Stewart, who has created a mini farm in his 1/5 acre in his Hartford South End home. It's an amazing personal story that I won't get into here, but every time I read about him, I think, I want to give you a corner of my yard because it's grass and I'm having to put chemicals on it that I shouldn't be putting. And, you know, like this year, a friend brought over some tomato plants and just in containers and put them on my brick patio. And I'm having such a marvelous experience just being able to go outside and pick some tomatoes for my dinner. And I grew up with a family that had a garden, but I haven't had one for many, many years. And it's just amazing how healing even nurturing a few plants can be. And I just think that maybe I could contribute more by giving some of my yard for that purpose to somebody who doesn't have disabilities. So I'd be interested to learn more even after this program is over, Liz, about any options. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Anyone else? Oh, Donnie.
As Lynn was talking, I was reminded of Keeney Park has a program that has to do with urban farming. I've not been there. They did have a cleanup day and I wasn't able to attend, but just something, you know, something local to those of us who are in the greater Hartford area to navigate, to investigate. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they do wonderful work. In fact, we talked to them about being a part of this program. They're really wonderful. Anyone else?
I'm in the Torrington area, and I think I saw this on social media to join. And I find that just watching the TED Talk and watching the video was very informative. And I like what you also were saying at first about the project that was in New York, the Soulfire Farming Project with the yard work. And I know that you're focusing a lot in Hartford, or is something like that in the Litchfield County as well, or is it just in Hartford?
There's the Knox Parks Foundation, and then I think Ileia is going to talk to us about a food growing program out of the Charter Oak Cultural Center. But I'm not, I know there are a lot of farms, but I don't have my hand on the pulse of really what's going on specifically in Connecticut.
Okay, that was my question. Like, is it just for the Hartford, or is it outside? But thank you for answering that part.
Yeah, and I think there are Black farmers throughout the state. There was an article, if you Google it, there was an article a couple of years ago, and then Lynn was referencing one that came out more recently. And I think they are kind of all over the state. If no one else, this is a very good segue. Thank you for a little conversation with Ileia Belton. Does anybody else have any questions before we talk to Ileia? And we'll have more chance to talk too. So this is not your last opportunity. So with us tonight are Ileia Belton and Tiffany Tucker, both of whom are gardeners in our Eats of the Street program. Our Eats of the Street program at Charter Oak Cultural Center started in 2010. So this is the 13th year we're doing it. And we had a young intern he was a summer intern, and he went to Manhattan while he was working with us. And he came back from Manhattan. He said, I saw a man in need, and he was hunched over a pot of flowers. And I thought to myself, what if that pot had vegetables in it? And so that was the birth of this idea. And we started Connecticut's first street paper called Beat of the Street. So it's BOTS, so bots. So we call them bots pots. And this program is called Eats of the Street. And we put these large pots of organic vegetable plants on the streets of Hartford. And people in the homeless community take care of them, and we train them, and they're compensated for their very hard work to do this. And so let me tell you a little bit about Ileia. Ileia Belton is a single mom of 2 teenage girls. She lives in the Asylum Hill neighborhood in Hartford. She's a graduate of the Bott Center for Creative Learning, which is a school that we have at Charter Oak. She is currently attending Goodwin University, pursuing her BA in Human Services. And she wrote, I take care of 2 pots in my area, which is considered a food desert. I am grateful for the opportunity to be a part of the network that provides free vegetables for our community. Anybody in need can pick the vegetables, by the way. Charter Oak has been a great ally for my family, and I am honored to do my due diligence in paying it forward through Eats of the Street. So please welcome Ileia Belton. Hi there. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming tonight. You ready to talk a little bit?
Well, yeah, I do tend 2 pots in the Asylum Hill neighborhood where I live. It's part of a larger group. There's many pots around the city that Charter Oak provides for people to come, and there's vegetables that grow in the pots free for the taking for passersby, and also the unhoused community who don't have access to fresh vegetables. I do live in a food desert. I do like how the women refer to it as a food apartheid rather than a food desert, because I do feel that it is intentional the way that some of our neighborhoods are set up, where we don't have access to grocery stores. There's just like bodegas or like Family Dollars or Dollar Generals that don't necessarily provide produce. They have non-perishables, but they don't have produce. So the Bots Pods is a viable program that provides access for people who otherwise wouldn't have it in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, we say that they're food, jobs, and art for Hartford because provides jobs and food, obviously, and also we have artists paint the pots. What is the experience like for you taking care of the pots?
Well,
is it hard?
Well, I mean, it's not hard. I would say I have to bring water from my house I have to walk. It's not too far. It's less than a block from where I live. I have to bring water from my house to water the pots because there's not like a water source close to the pots. But my daughters help me. to bring the water to the pots. And they also, my daughters also were commissioned by Charter Oak Cultural Center to paint the pots because they're artists, and then they were compensated for the work. So I do thank Charter Oak for allowing them to be a part of that too. But yeah, like I said in the bio that I wrote, I'm just grateful to be able to pay it forward because Charter Oak has helped my family. And so whatever I can do for my community, I appreciate the opportunity to do that as well.
It was so hot this summer, and thank you for that, Ileia. It was so hot this summer. Was it hard to keep them going? And how did you do that?
Well, like I said, my daughters helped me carry, we just carry a watering can and an extra bucket of water over every day to water the pots.
Do you think that your daughters have learned a lot from this experience?
Well, it is a practice of humility, and I do talk to them about like what they're doing, like it's helping people that don't have access otherwise. So I do think that it's planting a seed in their mind, a way to just, I don't like to use the word charity, but to do charitable work just for the community.
Thank you so much for talking with us tonight. Is there anything else that you want to say?
No, I'm just happy to be a part of this, and I'm inspired by the work that they're doing up in Albany, and I look forward to reading the books that the author wrote, because I can grow food in my house. I mean, my niece, she actually just purchased a hydroponic garden for like a greenhouse to put inside of her apartment. So she inspired me as well. So I'm like, I want to do that too. Like just, she's growing some jalapeno peppers to start, but she just purchased like this small greenhouse on Amazon. So, I mean, anyway, I think that people should learn to farm for themselves, but also for your community as well. Because like I said, we don't always have access to grocery stores or different things like that, but it's just a good thing to learn to sustain your family and your community.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions before we're going to look at another video? Any questions for Ileia? And feel free to unmute yourself, and you don't have to just use that mechanical hand. Sometimes I miss it.
I'm curious about, like, does all the food that's grown in those pots get harvested? Like, you know, it's not like we're involved in a mitzvah garden at a synagogue in Cheshire, where, you know, Larry was a member, and we live up here, so we're still members down there. There, like, we grow the food, we harvest it, and they have all these records, like they know how many pounds were grown and how many pounds were delivered to the food pantry. I'm wondering, you know, like, does everyone in the neighborhood know about it? Are there people that go up to it and, oh, it's empty, oh, there's nothing, all the tomatoes are gone? Or do things, like, I'm just wondering what information there is about how well they get used.
Yeah, people go, and it's a really good question. The tenders are there, you know, every day. So if there are no vegetables and we need to plant more, we need to bring more plants in or whatever. So they're overseen all the time. And we don't harvest the vegetables. It's for anybody to come and pick. And we felt that you know, it's such a cool thing to be looking outside your apartment window or whatever and say, oh, you know, I need a cucumber, and you know, I need a tomato or some Swiss chard or whatever it is. So we felt it was kind of like Russian nesting dolls, that it served so many different purposes. It was beautiful, provided food, most importantly. It's a reminder that we should eat healthy. It's a reminder that there are people in need. It functions on several different levels. And what's interesting about it is the pots vary in size, but Whole Foods was a sponsor of the program a while ago. And so we have really big ones that they built. But once they got bought by Amazon, they were no longer involved with us. But it's amazing what you can grow in a pot. You could grow a lot of food. So they're there for anybody in need to pick the vegetables. And we have signs in English and in Spanish inviting people to pick the vegetables. Anybody else? Well, if not, then we'll go back to Liz.
Hear me? There you go.
There's two other short videos that I think you'll enjoy that really relate to all the themes that we've been talking about. So why don't we just go to the next one, Barbara? So this is
every patch of earth, unencumbered by concrete, where soil and atmosphere meet, be a portal to presence, a terrain of remembrance, a vote for survival in an unpromised future. These gardens are blueprints. Greetings, peace and blessings. My name is Leah Penniman, and I am the farm manager and co-director at Soulfire Farm in Mohican Territory, Grafton, New York.
Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality.
Now, something that astounds me is despite all of the obstacles against our people, the sharecropping, the tenant farming, the convict leasing, the just been out of slavery, right? Somehow that yearning for land lit a fire that could not be quenched.
Nobody's gonna hand you your freedom. You're gonna have to take it.
98% of the rural land in this country is white owned. I'm gonna say that again. 98% of the ground in this country that can grow food is white owned, which is actually more racially skewed than ever before in our history. And it brings us to where we are today, where I think it's no accident that the way we've treated the human beings who are closest to the earth is echoed and amplified in the way we treat the earth herself. We understand. Our food is grown in faraway places under neo-slavery, shipped thousands of miles by underslept drivers, prepared by dignified immigrants, diminished on night shifts, supper delivered to our doorsteps from a swipe of our fingerprints, stripped of virtue and nutrients. And who's gonna stop this? Back in 2005, when we started dreaming up Soulfire Farm, we asked ourselves, what would it be like to start a farm for the people based on this legacy? We at Soulfire Farm decided to build our agricultural practices based on these rememberers, reclaiming our great-great-great-grandmother's recipes, our ancestral technologies, Afro-Indigenous agroecology, dirt under fingernails, no shame or apology. And so we decided that a core principle of our work would be these survival programs, which is why the harvest of the land is boxed up every week and brought to the doorsteps of the people who need it most in our community. Refugees, immigrants, people who are surviving food apartheid and state violence, and folks can pay whatever they can afford down to zero for this life-giving food. My people know what it's like to eat and still be starved. So we turn in hardship into harvest, lawns and schoolyards into gardens, homegrown bounty in our palms. We come from soil and stardust, and so we conjure. Times are changing, and a new world is possible. Cross-pollinate the promise, fam. We got this. Take a deep breath. Restore calmness. My belief is that everyone who eats food and lives on land is responsible for healing and repairing the food system so that it's no longer based on stolen land and exploited labor, but instead is based on a sacred covenant between the earth and her human inhabitants. So I'm going to tell you the good news about what we, essential workers on the front lines, are doing to uproot racism and seed sovereignty in the food system and how you can get involved.
Until I am free, you are not free either.
In this time of multiple pandemics attacking our breath at every turn, From the choking of COVID to the choking of wildfire to the choking of police brutality, we see now more than ever the cracks in our industrialized food system and runaway capitalism laid bare. Let this moment not be a fad, but a permanent awakening to our sovereignty.
In an age of opulence and scarcity, every seed saved will set us free. In a time of intensifying violence and climate calamity, every seed saved will set us free. Hold on tight to the source. We have all that we need.
And then we have another video of Naima performing a poem, which is the last chapter of Black Earth Wisdom. And it just, I've watched it many times. I just really wanted to share it because it's so moving.
Could we just wait 1 second before we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
Of course.
I just wanted to see if anybody had any reactions to the beautiful video we just saw. Any questions? Yes, Linda.
Hi, may I ask a question? Couple of things. I live in downtown Hartford. I'm a farm girl. I was brought up on a farm in East Windsor and pick potatoes and help with the tobacco, and now I live in a high rise. And but I went to the country because I had a horse. But interestingly, Center Church has their social work and education building across from my condominium. And they similarly have planters out on the sidewalk in Gold Street. And there are many homeless people that walk in this, going to the park. And so there's something available for them. So I think that's really, really wonderful. I did want to add, I started reading Braiding Sweetgrass today, and I find the connection between the book that I've just started and this program very heartful. My question is, do you have any connection with Hartford Public Schools or with the libraries to bring this information to the young people? I think it would be, especially I think high school kids, junior high school kids, I think it would be extraordinary. Thank you.
I just want to say, Linda, those pots are our pots. Those pots at Center Church are our pots.
I had no idea. That's wonderful.
Yes, yes. And our school for people in the homeless community takes place at that church.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Liz, did you want to respond?
Well, I don't know what's being done in the schools. I think yeah, I'm not in touch with what's going on in the schools. I think this kind of curriculum and hands-on learning, when you put a seed in the ground, it grows, and the magic of that and the empowerment of that, I think that belongs in every school.
Yes.
At every stage.
We have a gardening program that's part of our one of our summer camps for kids. And one of our goals, we're renovating, as I said, we're renovating our original building, which is the first synagogue built in Connecticut, and the building next to us, which we bought, was the former home of the mayor of Hartford, and it's even older than our synagogue, than our original building. It was built in 1858. But we're redoing, as part of this renovation, our whole, we have green space. And one of our goals has been for many years to have an aquaponics system there, so that people could have, fish and vegetables all year round. So I'm going to see if we can actually make that work and have the kids be involved and people in our BOTS programming also. Shawnee?
So not much is going on in my town regarding the school, but in New Britain, every one of the elementary schools has like a greenhouse and a garden that's part of their curriculum. Now, it took a long time for that to happen, but Joey Listro is in charge of that, and he does a garden crawl every year, so you can go and see what amazing things are going on. And they did what you were talking about, Donna, at the high school. They did the thing with tilapia in the water, and then, but they didn't realize how hot the greenhouse was going to get, and all the fish died over the summer because it just, nobody was tending it. So, you know, they had to come up with something else. But it's, and New Britain is like leaps and bounds ahead of many of our other towns.
Liz, were you going to say something? You know, I wanted to point out that the connections that Leah mentions between how we treat the earth, how we treat women, how we treat people of color, they're all connected to one another, and the objectification of people and the oppression of people. So there are all those connections. And there are also the connections, you really see it in Naima's work, between the earth and art. She's a painter. She's a spoken word artist, obviously. And our pots too. I mean, they bring beauty in addition to nourishment. And so all of these connections are very important for us. They're not separate issues.
Yeah, people who prepare the food, harvest the food, they also are not respected or given proper conditions and rights and benefits for their work. So it's, yeah, the whole food system needs to be uplifted, every part of it.
Every part of it. Yeah. Lucinda, and then we have an interesting comment in the chat too. So
I just want to say that I'm very glad to hear you kind of say that about how everything is connected, because I was even having a response hearing those statistics, like 98% of the land is owned by white people. That's a little disturbing to me. You know, I just, and I know that that's our history and we're becoming more aware, but it still makes me have like this response. And I'm still learning how to channel that. And I think it's just to continue to bring awareness and just see what I can do for social justice. But I'm just grateful that you acknowledge that, because it all ties together and it all ties with keeping people oppressed and unhealthy.
Amen.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. And it's so important for us all to recognize that. And I think I have lots of room for any outrage. Yeah, I think that's really the appropriate response. It's just terrible. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Paquita, are you going to say something?
Oh, my head is kind of spinning. I think the conversation is really great and the videos are amazing. My family's from Virginia, and we're lucky because my family has land. My grandfather was a farmer, and I have family that's still farms. And so it's very interesting to realize the statistics and to realize you're an exception and it's not many. I think the other thing that I think this is an important topic, especially for those who live in the cities. When you have family that's in rural America, you kind of realize some of the problems and just how rural America works. When you live in the cities, you don't always see it. And so this is a really important topic because people don't know where their food's coming from. They don't realize most of their food is, built off of seeds that are built to make corporations rich, and that we don't really own seeds anymore. And so the things that like your Leah and her family are doing are really important, because if you're looking for heirloom seeds, looking for not even organic, just heirloom seeds, it's a difficult thing to find, and it's a difficult thing to get to. So it's a very important topic.
Oh, thank you. Where's your family's farm, in Virginia?
Yeah, they're in they live in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So they live in a town called Rocky Mount. It's between Martinsville and Roanoke, Virginia. So it's definitely in the middle. It's in rural America. It's very hardy rural America. We don't, my mom, of course, doesn't farm. So like the farming kind of ended with my grandfather on that side. But we still have the land, and it just makes you think, what do you want to do? So it's definitely making me think.
Yeah, you know, after reading the book, I have a flower garden, and now since I read the book, I don't just water my flowers; I offer a libation every morning. The book really is very, very, very powerful, and I think it's life-changing. Friend Frances Iono, Frances, write this because you didn't really want to say it. Can I read it, or would you like to speak? I'm assuming that means you want me to say it. Does everybody see it? Hi, everyone. I've been involved with gardening at Hartford schools for 10 years. Many schools have gardens, but staff are not able to do gardening. Myself and 2 others were instrumental in creating a school garden coordinator position, half-time, and gardening education will be aligned with the STEM curriculum, at least to start a few schools. Glad to talk about this. Oh, Valerie, it's you. Hi, Val. Thank you so much for, yes, Val's a great, a wonderful gardener. Thank you so much for saying that, bringing that to our attention. Oh, and volunteers schools are needed. Okay. I want to, before we'll end with Naima's poem, but I just want to say one more thing. Liz, did you want to say anything?
I see this as a beginning of a discussion that hopefully will be an ongoing dialogue among people that are here tonight and your communities. And yeah, I'd love to continue this conversation in some way. And I appreciate everybody who showed up and showed interest and shared your stories.
Tonight is kind of a seed.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the idea, Donna. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, Liz. No, thank you. It is really wonderful. So I'm just gonna read you one, I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna read one short thing, and then we'll have the video if it's okay. The national park system was formed by, the national parks were formed by ridding, the land was occupied and owned by indigenous people, and they were made to leave the land so that the Park Service could create the national park system. And I never realized that until reading the book. And there were racist policies, you know, how the national parks are supposed to belong to all Americans and we can all be in the outdoors. Well, that's not true. There were racist policies enforced in the beginning when the parks were first formed, and then once those rules and laws were lifted, then there were all kinds of incidents of racism in the parks, and it wasn't safe for people of color to be in the parks. So I think that's very important to know, and very indicative of how the United States treats green space and land, and who it's available to. And the last twist in the story is that, and then people say, well, people of color don't want to go to the national parks. We never see people in the national parks. People of color don't do this. They're environmentalists. And that's one of the reasons Leah wrote the book, to prove that that's not true, that there are plenty of African-American and people of color who are environmentalists. So that's one thing I want to say. The other thing is that, well, I want to read just a little excerpt from the book. And this is the book, I think Liz showed us before. It's just so beautiful. She says, she was interviewing somebody, and this is what Leah said to them. The same patriarchal power structure that oppresses and exploits girls, women, and non-binary people, and constricts and contorts boys and men, also wreaks destruction on the natural world: dominance, supremacy, violence, extraction, egotism, greed, ruthless competition. These hallmarks of patriarchy fuel the climate crisis just as surely as they do inequality, colluding with racism along the way. Patriarchy silences, breeds contempt, fuels destructive capitalism, and plays a zero-sum game. Its harms are chronic, cumulative, and fundamentally planetary. So, unless anybody has any more questions or comments or feelings they want to express.
We have a couple in the chat. One person is asking, what is the title of the book and the author's name? And then someone also asked if it's available in an audiobook.
I think it is available in an audiobook. It's called Black Earth Wisdom by Leah Penniman. That's Liz's daughter-in-law.
And the other book, is it available in audiobook as well? The Soulful, the
Farming While Black? I don't know. Liz, do you know?
I don't know. I think it's such a practical book that it might lose some of its usefulness as an audio, although I mean I think it'd be great to listen to, but I think if people want really, especially the practical guidance from the book, it'd be good to have a paper copy.
Oh, can I make a suggestion for farming the book? Because I did also read Braiding Sweetwater Grass. And what she's doing, I don't know if you've seen, what she's about to come out with is a young adult version of it. So parents can and adults can give to their kids the guidance that's in that book. And I think I haven't read the other one, but they seem like they're going to parallel very, very nicely. So she may want to consider looking at how to adapt the book so it becomes almost like a workbook or something for children and teenagers. And I don't know if the other book is out yet. I just remember seeing it on Amazon that she was about to release a children's version of Braiding Sweetwater Grass. So it just made me think this could also have the same kind of effect.
Wow. That's wonderful.
You want to set up the last video? Do you want to say anything about it before we start it?
It speaks for itself. It's the last chapter in Black Earth Wisdom.
Mama Nature told me, I am part of you. You are part of me. When we forgot, she remembered us. When we were lost, she found us. Mama Nature told me we have more than enough to go around. She showed me a glowing paper birch on the edge of the forest on a south-facing slope, endowed to grow twice as big. With all the sunlight it could ever drink, it could tower over, shade out the rest. It disperses its surplus sugars to boost the other trees instead. Could we be like that? Let go of excess, practice fair distribution of sustenance, regardless of what slope we were born on. Mama Nature taught me we are stronger together. She showed me the interspecies marriage of algae and fungi who fell in love across kingdoms, birthed a new life form, capable of making home on stone, adept at staying alive in the harshest conditions. Could we be like that? Join forces across difference, weave our powers, individual but undividable, in the midst of unthinkable circumstances, learn how to flourish together. Mama Nature taught me blackness is precious and must be respected and must be protected from artificial light and must be tended. She showed me the indigo night, the miracle of starlight, the deep, dark ocean, the rich black soils brimming with life. Mama Nature taught me nothing and no one is disposable. It all goes back to the cycle. She showed me there is no such thing as a way. not for our waste heaped high in landfills or amassing in the Pacific, not for our people deemed throwaway, warehoused in cages and open-air prisons. There is no escaping the totality of this single beating earth. There is no mistaking. All of us belong. Mama Nature told me, you are made of the same matter as stardust. Remember your connection to everything. She showed me this animate force of existence pulsing all around us, doing everything in its power to regenerate life, even in death. She showed me a hollowed out tree, still standing, long dead. A hatchery for starlings, a porcupine den, a perch for owls, a hideout for bats, a food cache for chipmunks, a nuthatch's nest. Could we feel our ancestors' love like that? Palpable and present all around us, sheltering and nourishing us, supporting our flourishing. Could we be eternal? Mama Nature taught me, death energizes life. Life necessitates death. She showed me cypress seeds enclosed in cones, sealed shut with resin, the hardened shell, the trapped potential, the awakening flame, the wild inferno, the melting walls, the bursting open, the smoky wind, the scattered soaring, the free fall flight to fresh, warm soil, the open sky, the widened space to grow and grow and grow. Could we be like that, rising from devastation, preparing the way for the next stage of thriving? Mama Nature taught me transformation is inevitable, adaptation is essential, change creates openings. She showed me how dolphins evolved dorsal fins to withstand the wild movement of the ocean, how plants befriended fungi who helped them migrate out of water, who taught them how to grow roots, who showed them how to survive on scorched land, until together they transformed the atmosphere, built soil over stone, and patiently, unmistakably changed the entire world. Could we be like that? Work together to do the unthinkable and shift the course of destiny. Mama Nature asked me, what will be your contribution? How will you partner with renewal to usher evolution? What are you willing to let go of? How are you willing to grow? Will you remember you are intrinsic to something bigger? What will you give rise to with the life force you've been given? Mama Nature asked me, can you hear me? And are you listening?
Beautiful to share all this with you tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Liz. It was just marvelous. Thank you, Ileia, for your beautiful contribution. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's really an honor. And I hope you have a very good rest of your summer and that you chew over what we've talked about. I know I will. And that it brings you nourishment. Again, Liz, blessings to you. Thank you so much. Ileia, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.